The big juicy detail that a lot of people are talking about is actually that a lot of players in the locker room who had disbelief on their face on the field when the game was lost, once they reached the locker room, it really boiled over. There was some yelling at Eberflus, and the tree topper here in this scenario was Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson was not having it, according to Adam Johns. In quotes, he says that Jalen went crazy, one Bears player said. He was very emotional and pissed, but rightfully so. He's been here longer than most. And if you guys had seen his interview, I believe on Tuesday, before the Thanksgiving game, he looked pissed in the interview. So for him to kind of play his butt off, have the team have the bend but don't break philosophy, essentially get your ass kicked in the first half, and have your quarterback take you all the way back, and even to the last dying moments of the game, have your quarterback take you half the way down the field on a 99-yard ask to win the game, or a field goal to tie, of course. But to finally have that ripped from you again after all these performances, I really can't blame Jalen Johnson for screaming and getting mad. It sucks. Something that wasn't mentioned in this article, but I find very, very funny as well. If you guys are on Twitter, you guys should follow Jaquan Brisker. Jaquan Brisker he's a very funny, a very animated, very lively guy. I don't like him as much as others because I'm not a fan of Penn State, and he very much is. That's his school. But when Eberflus did the interview at 9 a.m., he tweeted a laughing emoji, and then he tweeted something along the lines of "God doesn't make mistakes," something like that when he did get fired. And then the funny one today, which I don't know if everyone has seen, he actually said, "It feels good to be back on grass," smiley face. So it's almost as if he was put on IR because his antics off the field. So hopefully he actually doesn't have a concussion, or a lot of people are saying that Matt Eberflus has given him this migraine that are having these symptoms come back. Sorry for that tangent. But outside of that, I think...
You know what? I think it's a relevant tangent, though. I think it's a relevant tangent. Because Paul and I said this the day Matt Eberflus got hired. It's part of my biggest issue with him. He's a nice guy with nice opinions, and he has a nice team, and that's what Indianapolis was when he left. And sometimes in football, you need a couple of crazy guys who hit hard. And Jaquan Brisker, whether you like him or not, or how you feel about him, Penn State or otherwise, is a crazy dude who hits hard and plays well.
He also has that ability that, what's that son of a bitch's name? He went from the Saints to he's on the Eagles again. He was on the Lions last year. Johnson. Yeah, that son of a bitch. I hate him. But that's the kind of asshole that you sometimes need, the little chirping that he does. I adore it. I'm sorry, keep going.
And you not only, but you're right. You need it. You need this on a team. You need some attitude. You need some of these guys
that offsets the Jalen Johnson, shut the hell up and play hard. I mean, you can't have a team of just that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where if Eberflus is talking about hits principles and being this and being that and trying hard, and dude, football is not a nice sport. It's an hour-long sport that lasts 4 hours where all dudes do is bash the shit out of each other. And you want a bunch of nice guys to be respectful and follow the hits principle. You're stupid if you think that's how it goes. And everything that I've heard from Sean McVay about Thomas Brown, about I know Thomas Brown played in Georgia. I think it was Kirby Smart making comments about Thomas Brown's if that's the head coach of Georgia. Like I said, I'm not a football guy, but they were commenting about like Thomas Brown's track record as a player, as a coach. And they were just talking about how he was just like the hardest working, biggest. He was like anything he wanted to do, he would have done it. He would have smashed him in the mouth. He would have beat the shit out of him. And that's what Thomas Brown's attitude is. And I guarantee you, Thomas Brown is going like, man, I need Jaquan Brisker back out there. If it's an attitude thing that Matt Eberflus just doesn't like, because the way it sounds, if all of a sudden Jaquan Brisker is healed and he's back on the grass, it sounds more like Jaquan Brisker pulled a Jalen Johnson 4 or 5 weeks ago before it was socially acceptable. Where Jaquan Brisker is going like, what the fuck are we doing here? And then Matt Eberflus goes, you need to sit down. And now Jalen Johnson does it, your team captain, the best player on your team. And it blows over in the media. And now it's a point where it kind of, that's why I'm saying it is relevant. It is funny to talk about and stuff like that, but it is relevant, man. Because when one of your best players on your team is being benched because he has an attitude problem or calls it how it is, that's a problem with the coach, not the player. So yeah, I'm with you though. I just didn't want to. I wanted to just make a tangent on that.
I think a lot of the players coming out and saying, "Oh, I would have done this," or "I'm frustrated that this happened." I almost think that it's just a domino effect from the lack of accountability. So
Absolutely,
a lot of the media and a lot of the people in this space, viewers, podcasters, they all seem to think that taking accountability is the number one top priority thing just so that they can feel good. I actually disagree with that. I think that a coach admitting defeat is kind of a huge red flag. Not to say that it shouldn't happen, and obviously you see a Dan Campbell do it all the time, almost to the point where it's like a Disney movie a little bit with him. But if you really take accountability when it matters, hopefully that would tell your players to not kind of have these tantrums, things like that, or just not having your players on the same page, like having a DJ Moore say, "Oh, I don't know why this happened," things like that. I mean, that's why that stuff is happening.
The philosophy with that, I agree with you 100%, Karl. But and then this is a quick way to summarize it, and we can move on if you want to. But yeah. Mike Tomlin is the definition of what Matt Eberflus is trying to be. A guy who's literally like, I've heard Mike Tomlin say this, like everything is kept in-house. We do not let things leave this room. That is Matt Eberflus's theory. But the problem is that with Mike Tomlin, he will call himself out or just not make that mistake to begin with. So it's easier to have self-accountability and or accountability on your people under you when you are either A, making less mistakes than them and you know better, or when you do make a mistake, you own it, say, "Hey guys, this is where I messed up. This is how we're going to fix it, and it will never happen again. Now we can move on to what you guys also do."
Yeah. The key point with all of that.
When you keep making the mistakes, though, as Matt Eberflus did forever and ever,
he's not practicing what he's preaching. What do you think that Thomas Brown has to do on the Chicago Bears specifically to be the head coach of this football team next year, if there even is an option for him to do that?
Man, I don't think the bar has been set very high, and I don't think that his performance needs to necessarily be very, very high. I think that, unfortunately, the Bears are, first and foremost, looking at this as a potentially cheap upgrade. And I think the Bears do most things on a wing and a prayer, hoping that they luck out, hoping that, hey, part of the theory that I have here with Thomas Brown and how it goes is if Thomas Brown does decent or mediocre and he has a good 5-game set, if he goes to another team based on that audition and the Bears go with the popular choice, I think the popular choice will underperform and Thomas Brown will go somewhere and absolutely dominate and be a really good head coach. And if Thomas Brown does really well here and we hire him, or if he does 3-2 and does mediocre, I think we're still going to hire him, or we're going to do the opposite. And the guy who was the obvious choice, like Ben Johnson, is going to be somewhere else doing really, really well. So that's more of the pessimistic option of that, in the sense of, I think wherever he goes or whoever we take, it's going to be the wrong choice. But I do have a realistic opinion on that.
How does Ben Johnson, in your eyes, become the obvious choice?
I think pure hype at this point. I think pure hype at this point. I think it's literally, he has very few connections in the NFL in terms of like a coaching tree or anything like that. I think he has one of the most absurdly talented rosters in the NFL. And the Penei Sewell pass, screen option pass thing, and the whole broadcast just losing their minds about how clever that was. If that was Shane Waldron, everybody would be
Can you imagine
shreds the
if the 1-11 Lions did that play instead of the 11-1 Lions?
It's
that stadium
hype.
Might be shaken down to the core.
Yeah, that's why I was like watching that. I'm like, that was the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And everybody's just like, that was so clever. Ben Johnson almost pulled off another one. And I was just like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever seen. What the fuck are we talking about here?
Because we would see that in Chicago, in Soldier Field, against the Packers. It would get returned for a pick six, and the guy who threw the ball, whichever offensive lineman or fullback, they would have a broken arm. That would be a fireable offense on the spot. But just because the Lions have been investing in their offensive line for 10 years, 10 years of losing football to have an offensive line of 5 middle to high first round picks, by the way. One of the guards didn't get drafted by the Lions, but they were acquired because I think they had a player in a similar situation, whatever the case was. I do think that Ben Johnson is propped up because of, a broken clock is right twice a day. You're going to be getting all these draft assets, and it's so easy to just dump it into the offensive line because those guys will have a longer career. Doesn't take as much for them to be, rock stars. Penei Sewell, fantastic football player. But I think that Ben Johnson is a little bit overhyped. And at the end of the day, outside of the not having the coaching candidates or connections, how has he proved himself as being a better situational awareness type guy than Matt Eberflus? It literally has not existed, and it could just follow him, or that could follow to the Bears, and we could have kind of this good. I think he is a great offensive coordinator. I think even with the talent, I still think that the way that he's producing, I think it's good. But I think that Matt Eberflus is a really good defensive coordinator. But obviously that did not translate to being a good head coach. So with Ben Johnson, I really don't think that he's this surefire slam dunk, give him $70 million a year, give him the Shohei Ohtani contract. Absolutely not. This guy is the opposite of anything but a guarantee.
I'm with you. I'm doubling down on that. We can be the negative Nancys for the offseason if we want to be, right? And if Ben Johnson gets hired, me and you can just hold hands and doubt him for the whole summer, right? But part of this, I wouldn't even go so far as to say Trestman, but he's definitely more of a Nagy. And part of that reason is when you have a guy like Dan Campbell, who's super, super rah-rah and an emotional leader and a situational game manager, there's a lot of yin and yang and contradictions in a team and the structure and all that stuff that you have to do. Aaron Glenn is a really good defensive coordinator, but he's probably pretty aggressive as a defensive coordinator. Ben Johnson is the analytical nerd on that team, while Dan Campbell gets to be the rah-rah loud guy. So if you don't have the rah-rah loud guy as your defensive coordinator, like Mike Vrabel or something like that, and a good, person to keep you in check, we have zero idea about what Ben Johnson is as a coach, as a head coach, as a leader of men. So more so than the fact that I have no doubts about his offensive prowess and of his offensive game planning and scheming and all that stuff, I'm not questioning any of that. I just have no idea if he's going to be a decent head coach. And part of that is, this is crazy theory crafting. I've never seen an NFL coach duck a challenge and be successful. And Ben Johnson saw a field of Jaden Daniels and the Patriots and the Bears and all these different head coaching opportunities and was like, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait because I have a good thing going over here, and I'm going to duck away from that challenge, and I'm just going to keep being successful.
If there was one,
a little bit of a red flag.
If there was one man in the world who would be able to talk me out of millions of dollars and a head coaching position in the NFL to win one for win a Super Bowl, that is, for a team that has never won a Super Bowl, that was Dan Campbell. I forgot what Dan Campbell's standard caffeine intake is, and I think the FDA says that if you take more than 800 milligrams, you're fucked. I think that Dan Campbell was off the 1,000 milligrams of caffeine, if not cocaine, and Buddy was talking to Ben Johnson for hours, just saying, you have to stay one more year. We are so close. If you win the Super Bowl and then you go to be a head coach and you suck, it doesn't matter because the city of Detroit, you'll never have to do a single thing there. You'll live there for free. You'll eat for free. So I'm not going to blame that on him whatsoever, because he also knows that just by winning a Super Bowl with the Lions, he's going to make insane money. But the problem here is that I don't want to be the Bears and give it to him, because we absolutely could see Trestman 2.0, Nagy 2.0. Hell, Dable 2.0. That's what the direct comparison is, right? He could go in, transform an offense, have some success, not even go to the playoffs, and be the head coach of the year. That's just what happens. But continued sustained success is absolutely not guaranteed with Ben Johnson whatsoever.
No, and that's part of. So here's my theory and my thought process on going into next year, right? And it's gonna be, yeah. And sorry, Crimson is one of my favorite guys because he just follows us. He follows you. He's everywhere, and he's I got to give Crimson a shout out when he makes a good point because Crimson's awesome. Dan Campbell was an absolute joke of a hire in Detroit until he wasn't. Right? He was 0-10-1 until he won his like first game or something like that, and then all of a sudden he was Dan Campbell. Right? So good point by Crimson, and so and I don't necessarily think that Ben Johnson's going to be bad. Somebody's going to get him. Like I said, it's more of a Bears fan just trauma dump right now, where wherever Ben Johnson goes, if it's not in Chicago, he'll probably be great. He'll probably be the best offensive coordinator or head coach in the league next year, rookie head coach of the year or whatever. But if he comes to the Bears, he'll probably be a dumpster fire and just have a bunch of schemes and start throwing it to Larry Borum, and Larry Borum's going to pass it back to Roma Dunze, and Roma Dunze's going to pass it back.
I hope that Larry Borum is only on this roster because of an untimely injury, and I pray to God that if not injured, that he simply would not have made the cut. Maybe he gets brought back to the practice squad and we're still back to square one. But if it wasn't for your top three tackles getting hurt, I'm pretty sure, right? I believe there was a situation where Darnell Wright, Braxton Jones, and Karan were all hurt. That's the only reason he's seeing the field. But my God, he fucking sucks. I hate Larry Borum so much. I'm sorry.
No, I know. I'm throwing out a ridiculous name there just to kind of like make the point of Ben Johnson doing this ridiculous shit. And we started this whole question about Thomas Brown. What does he need to do and all that stuff, right? Here's my fears. And I want to go into next year and next season with a coaching staff that is making the Bears noticeably better, right? Whether that's Mike Vrabel, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, even Thomas Brown, depending on how he ends the season. I'm going to leave Thomas Brown out of this conversation. You get Kyle Shanahan by some miracle. You get Mike Vrabel by some miracle. You are going into next year and the win totals are going up. And you're going into each game with identity. And you're going into each game thinking, hey, this is how the Bears are going to win this game, right? This is how the Bears are going to play. They're going to play hard defense. They're going to run the ball. They're going to throw the ball when it needs to be thrown. Caleb Williams is going to progress. This is all that good stuff that we want to see. But I need a coaching staff that's going to kind of demonstrate that we're on the up rather than a 50-50. So let's say Thomas Brown, your original question, what does Thomas Brown need to do? I don't think he needs to do much to impress George McCaskey, if I'm being perfectly honest, because I think George is going to sit there and cower in fear like the little boy that he is and think, if I let this guy go and he is good somewhere else, mommy will be very mad and mommy will make me feel really sad about this. And mommy will make me, it's all about mommy, like for George, mommy. It's unbelievable. So George is going to operate on fear, and he has forever, and it's demonstrated at this point. And we want to like keep pretending like it's not, but like we've said forever, the Bears do everything 30 to 40% way too late. And Matt Eberflus is probably like 200% too late. But right now, he's going to keep operating under fear instead of confidence. And instead of, I'm going to approach this as the best football owner this offseason, right? If George was a serious person, he would come out and we're going to get to this. I'm going to make the Rams an offer they can't refuse and bring Sean McVay over here. I'm going to bring Kyle Shanahan and the Niners had a mutual parting of ways. I am going to make sure that there is no offer out there that is better. Oh, no. I mean, absolutely. Barlissimo. Yes, 100%. I've joked about it 100%. The Virginia gets wheeled into every meeting, shits her pants, and then makes a decision. It's literally just clockwork. So George is going to operate under fear this offseason. And I think that's why Thomas Brown does not need to do much to get that job next year. I think it's almost like locked in unless he goes 0-5. If he even goes 1-4 and Caleb ends up breaking the rookie passing record, or God forbid, Caleb has 4,000 yards this offseason, it's going to be Thomas Brown by a landslide, which brings in so many new questions. So now we're going into a new experimental year. Well, Thomas Brown finished 1-4, but he made Caleb look really good. And now we're going to see what happens. And we're going to come into next year going like the Bears could be a 500 team. They could be a 10-win team. They could be a 5-win team because we don't fucking know, because it's Thomas Brown and he had a 5-game audition. And if Thomas Brown went to, like, I don't know, the Bengals he would make Joe Burrow an MVP quarterback probably. This is me speaking as a trauma dump right now. But I think the standard is going to be so low. But I can guarantee you this one thing. Thomas Brown will probably be hired, and we will absolutely skip on the number one slam dunk candidate. There will be one. There will be Sean McVay. There will be Kyle Shanahan. There will be Mike Vrabel. There will be Bill Belichick. We're going to miss out on whoever the slam dunk candidate will be.